That's about the time when he was so many years through a few years after, as they say here. Then any normal date, because the Mongols did not yet exist your calendar well. Actually my Chinese, they borrow the early 13th century. The Chinese 12-year-old circular calendar, and here in 1201. The city will only go normal taxes, and so much constantly go in different version of that, and then when there was really nobody knows even when was born. There are 3 dates: 33 date of birth Esh on 1155 116 to 1172, but to talk about it sense no more. As this story to separate us, I will only say that the majority recognizes that the date of birth of Genghis Khan 1160 to year, because there are normal reliable dates of birth and children's 1180 years, and is reliable date of death of Genghis Khan in 1227. The year, and already on the basis of to restore the approximate chronology of events. But even in this chronology at all, and so much to eat temporary failure when nothing happens. And it is not known where was Genghis Khan after the Battle of the Dali Baljut. With Yarfly sections when Temujin was, you will find a Yarfly edge welded 70 prisoners in boilers, and the next big story, failure temporary knows where Genghis Khan was, what he was doing. The version I have outlined it my own, and it is based on the fact that it is impossible to explain. We are losing the internal logic of events, is only assume that immediately after Genghis Khan was defeated in Jamahai, the battle gave the currency. He was in Jace comply well where is the logic of the thing? What is clearly known after winning Jamahiriya, disturbed by his cruelty Mongol tribes, and who are not accustomed to the fact that prisoners are boiled in cauldrons, housing too. The bravest of the tribe moved to the side, there and Gina. Freak Ivan Gudgovachasane was forced to retreat. Because his coalition was broke, Temujin became stronger after the defeat before the battle well, and how he was able to be in Georgian scam captivity, why, and moreover, at this point, it is logical that there was a battle with the Tatars in which caveat this. The Mongols defeated a Tatar of Russia with the support of James, someone of the emperor. Because you know what, in 1182 over the punitive campaigns, recruiting management has the Mongol steppe when enough of the Mongols. The Mongol children were sold into slavery in Shandong. Policy has changed, and why it changed. Because Jack Female the emperor saw the result of such punitive expeditions of the Tatar tribe too strong of a table, and was the hegemon of the great steppe in China. To all nomads came to be called Tatars, soon for them was a special Chinese critic the oak, and now all tribes of the great steppe became known as Tatars because there is usually the strongest tribe like his. But the name applies to all the others in the Soviet Union. All the inhabitants of all citizens of our country called by Russians and Tatars, Yakuts and Uzbeks, all the Russian border, and so here, accordingly, changed policy, so just had to be that moment in order to put this battle of the Koreans, the Mongols, other Tatars, and win big Genghis Khan Nanda Tatars, which brought him fame and production. But it is under this banner were in the desert the resistance Tatar aggression, supported by the Emperor of Northern China. Here was his opportunity, he overcome normally. But after he won, he decided that he was not just Kanda Federal, the leader of the tribes, that he really punished Mongolian areas that were not at war on the Mongols' same steppe customs. But they are offended by Temujin for the fact that, well, feasting not filed in time, the mayor is not in the cereal, or serve offended respectively Polina Swing Temujin. They came to the war on normal, the behavior of the steppe aristocracy, to help you understand why they resented here what petty things, but that tribal society is the honor for the father in the business. Understand that Russian villages back in the 1970s was that's when you came to the village. If you have your mouth dear even traces their boy 18. There is a 20-year-old, then you will call on my name, and if your father was a drunkard, ident was not drunk, useless junk, you 2 40 years will be called Roly 5K Voska, and so on. This is a normal, natural human behavior in the ancestral society and step with the same breed of honor and then understand. And properly seated, remember how Boris in Yeltsin said not soured his ministers to take on the echo when it was still the product, to the point of absurdity, as Russian boyars in the 17th century bickered places, not Chile, due to the place of the sovereign in the pen or the council, that the word of the localism, mine, I just have to sit here. Me seniority should have lamb shoulder, and you give me Guznov gave Guznov, should just feel younger. Taught resentment, but manners 3, therefore they offended and attacked, still the product, to the point of absurdity, as Russian boyars in the 17th century bickered places, not Chile, due to the place of the sovereign in the pen or the council, that the word of the localism, mine, I just have to sit here. Me seniority should have lamb shoulder, and you give me Guznov gave Guznov, should just feel younger. Taught resentment, but manners 3, therefore they offended and attacked them. Temujin was gathering his troops, and waited, and he waited in 1197. Delicate balance. The great steppe collapsed, after the Korean Wonho at once overthrew his subjects. With the support of the Naiman in the Korean horde was the coup. Came to power a brother, a cousin, or a brother, well, in short, any of the surviving relatives. The guerrilla, who have just not killed until the end. After that, Temujin, immediately gathering their soldiers, marched to the aid of the chosen, the guerrilla, and restored it to the Korean throne. Which meant that in a couple of Temujin the guerrillas rolled. Temujin rose sharply now. It is not just a fugitive who came back from prison, and there is great, not just smaller. As an equal ally, he stressed strongly loyalty to the guerrilla. He wanted to use the power of Koreans in the struggle for power the following year. Or the same in 1197, he sent Buddha and Raidmerk is in Sabutai. Showed in all the glory of your military talent. He then began its rise as a commander. He defeated Mir Pussy and Swing drove a large number of cattle and 90% of production. Temujin gave it was burning to the was able to consolidate his power. Koreans, well, what power may heir when he gives generously gifts, subjects then satisfied, and praise his con and ready to serve him, and if he gifts given about the bad start. We x such a knife if he has no gift that ought to do x to attack caravans to plunder. They take the loot and again to give them to her. And how you were going to attack shopping caravans when you ally that the female emperor of the interest of the trade, to put him above all the caravans, that is, you need to attack them where to take booty to give the warrior can. Therefore, it burned you overthrow when he became an ally of your Jenny. But Temujin him the prey please gave all is now well on burned out, was a cunning rascal, treacherous and despicable person, not just a fratricide constantly changing sides. The star was searching for his benefit and felt that's it, that's where you take the loot, to plunder other people's tribes. He continued the war with the following standards: year, very successfully attacked a small, defeated them, captured more prey, but not sharing a single head of cattle. 100 men took it all. Fujin tolerated because he needed the support of Wonho. That already started a big war against versus Naiman. Naiman split into 2 tribes. After the death of the old and wise and weak Kohana, they broke out of the normal course for nomads, the war of succession between his 2 sons, between the Bui Hans and Daenon. And judging from the names of these Normankins, one of them was Chok on the other. Mongols. Dayan Khan is clearly Mongolian, the name after the Mongol Empire in the 16th century. Will still be Dayan Han, the Mongolian steppe, and here is the Bui of the Hans. That is the name of the Turkic. It is quite possible that he was the son of one, was the son and I'm a little sky concubine of another Mongol general. From the usual story, as well split, I told you about what it consisted of Turks and Mongols, Mongol elite, Turkic nomads, normal split times. He cracked them. This is an excellent opportunity for critical eternal enemies. Naiman attack and manhunt. With this men attacked the Naimans. They attacked my hand and crushed his hope. That Dayan X rival battle. The lesson will not interfere in this fight given Hale intervened. He was a smart man. I understand that it is impossible to give the enemy the advantage over their fellows. And while the winners feasted, he sent hand on Marine army led by the best General Cox with the marriage campaign, the sudden campaign against them. And there was an amazing story. Gavacha, the network, said that the guerrilla come to quit Temujin and leave, substituting the Mongols under attack. Naaman Sky hold why he did it, and Gavacha in this blame is an interesting question given that your edifice was special interest in such weakening and even the death of his sister. His Andes Temujin, but the guerrilla of Tayan interest was he wanted to free himself from into the increased influence of the name of the sun, which was required a return to power, and rather its slightly inverted causal relationship is probably not Shomuki persuaded burned down. Throw Genghis Khan on the contrary, that guerrillas persuaded Yarfly, maybe not just persuaded and pulled over, is because in the subsequent battles Gavacha very quickly threw Koreans and generally rode style. But without anticipating the men were in mortal danger. And he had played many years of training his soldiers that he was a failure. They turned into hardened fighters. Intelligence reported just goes Cox collect Emagon and out from under the noses of the Norman army, hiding the traces of their horses in the river. They are on the water in the left side, sending one of the units with herds of cattle to bring the Naamans to the camp. Your flies and the guerrillas to the trail. Here is fresh left coke, and the marriage itself follow this. The trail went straight to staying at the guerrilla attacked and smashed to smithereens. The Koreans suffered a terrible defeat, and Gavacha left immediately, led up and rode with his tribe in your swing. The following day began a new battle. I of the U and NATO guerrilla Milka Songdan again was defeated. When things carry, it was already very bad. Suddenly Impel al Naaman, there is the army of Temujin, deals a crushing blow and literally saves the Caribbean Con and get old mother who lies paralyzed. The soul of man is the nicest man, but the whole the team loves. But he sucks at his job. No, here if you can fire, then you can be a leader and you will improve. And if not, for you're always going to subordinates, killing, bargaining. That Cyril spirit Temujin all step showed that he can be a great leader. One of the times in the subordination of people power is the fear people have to be afraid power. For another second mystery, which many cruel rulers were forgotten, people yet to love power, at least the controller. And the association of fear and love cements the people and makes the absolute power of the ruler, and substituted loved and feared therefore for him to tornadoes, and the order was fulfilled unconditionally. And if the ruler just afraid, and we usually hate, and the first opportunity would betray him, but if he was not afraid, but then the husband just sit on the neck. Nothing good is also not whether it is men, showed that he could be a great ruler. But more importantly, he joined his order the people you Jude he's just of all the people took, and turned on the composition of its troops. Once the cashier of the Second World War, it separate tens and hundreds and thousands in this case. All these heads, no, all these here is a generic northern lords who ruled, they were all killed. It was the first step, of course, developing the reform that UB began in the great step. He knowingly locked up in a cell in the women's. He pondered why he was betrayed by his relatives. Why in his favor were the people who attached no ancestral ties and had supported him, and someone on whom he could rely. Gradually came to the idea that you need to kill nobility and everywhere to supply personally. Owe him their talented people here. He started it to do first in his small district. And now you're adding the Duke background of their all included in the Ullus, smashing a dozen 200s and thousands instead of tribal society. Had turned out a horde of people in the army, but it still, after all, was just such a local here. So here its destroy don't spread to all the other allied tribes. And the Mongols themselves, all that nobility, all of these are relative of Genghis Khan. All that has Ahu charms, aren't over, they all were in force, were there your swing. But Kirill reform was as if to say life on a not so going to reform. Took all of her down like steel, then it will be in many civilized countries of the parts, and Genghis Khan illiterate nomad, even realizing that he does. He couldn't just go against the customs of the steppe, and no one knew because every Mongol weapons. Each Mongol wars, every nomad wars. If the nomads decide what to listen to Hon, you broke our modest custom, you did wrong. And all the power of the Khan immediately entered the basements, so that's it again as a young man. He began to quickly. He was immediately deposed, he learned well the lesson. And now I got only conquered, only traitors, eliminated, and who he faithfully served you. In the old custom lived all was well until served, but they also began to notice that the power of Tayan shorter and shorter twisted, and it was to call them dissatisfaction. 1200 well. After you became a man and you were defeated after the merchant Kirill died, it became clear that a mighty and formidable force was rising in the steppe, and all the other tribes absolutely united in order to resist this force, and for the first time, the tribal struggle in the steppe turned into a real civil war. In on the one hand, Mongolia, the Paradise Union, under the leadership of Temujin Genghis Khan, was already building a show of a completely new construction of the people, an army of their own or die, even if at first they were only true to this part. And on the other hand, there were all supporters of the paternal customs of living as in the old confederacy, from the time when everyone in his family wanders through the ancestral nomads, obeys the ancestral Khan, is just like in the old days. There are two programs. On one side, Temujin was the leader, and on the other, guess who Yavaka II is? His Ando is his brother, his faithful friend. It was he who led the unification of 15 tribes. And in 1201 he was proclaimed on the sacred site of the Kun organ, where the Mongolian Confederacy leaders were always proclaimed. He was proclaimed a Khan, the Khan of the peoples, and 15 tribes, including the Judah, the Terah, the Merkit, the Naim, and the Nosim, were offended. He was supported by individual members of the Mongolian nobility, who were dissatisfied with Temujin's rise. They gathered troops and the two armies clashed. A battle took place in the Khitan Tract. The sorcerers of Jama Heavy called the storm a thunderstorm. But this thunderstorm turned against the warriors of the Drams themselves and fell on them. For the Mongols of the steppes, the thunderstorm is not that it is something monstrous, terrible. Because imagine for yourself, here it is a bare steppe. There are no peaks. There are no peaks. It will hit any higher level object very often into people. So the Mongols were terrified of gross, and when a thunderstorm broke out, the army of the Yar machine simply dropped all its weapons and hid their shields with anything and prayed for the salvation of life. I'll turn like a cat behaves. When thunder rumbles near a cat and knows they themselves have round eyes and press their ears and hide somewhere, that's how they react. Some of Tatar captives through him that you are here not long to live now slaughtered all of you. And realizing that awaits them captured by the Tatars rebelled. They were unarmed. They rushed to the Mongol guards and the battle started, in which the Mongols suffered a very great loss, so broke Nobel Guta. And after that Genghis Khan was forbidden to call for advice. Because you're not, can you keep a secret? Keep my mouth shut, but not everyone actually. Where was killed two sisters, differed in rare beauty. He men took a wife 1,000 about the Tatar warriors his brother Hussar refused to execute. Because he them in Ulis took it and didn't want to lose such a brave Bogaturov of servants who are very well served, and other places till they survived, so to say that all the Tatar people were exterminated, but he can't kick it cause crushing, and most importantly, they ceased to exist as a separate tribe, and all the times slipping on Mongol Ulis servants Europe their anything as concubines, and women possessed of many to determine punitive detachment that threw ahead of the Mongol armies to storm castles and fight in the forefront, because the Mongols, as a small tribe, valued the lives of their people tried. Where can substitute under the enemy's arrows and swords yesterday's enemies and captured. And then have Genghis Khan began to emerge that this tactic is the use of assault crowds Basharov to suppress the enemy before front, actually the Mongolian troops. Well, and due to this the simulators, but not he disappeared from history after the defeat. And the tribe spread wide input the Mongol invasions, and we Tatars and Volga here. Please the Tatars of the Crimean Tatars, Siberian Tatars. Though they initially of course nothing of the books Genghis Khan to the Mongols, not a dictator, who lived in the Mongolian steppe days, but I will tell you another special. From why is the extended simulator, who are the Tatars? While it is necessary to report to 12-0 to the stater and it was over and just like that. And Duke phrases popped all the elders of the new Mongolian People's Army who remained in the steppe. Remain chain name and measurements, you indomitable continued fiercely to fight against Genghis Khan. And Kira and you and the question has not yet been decided who will be the ruler was far from solved if you I think that all of Genghis Khan has already won no more than once of will on the verge of death. Normal teamed up with Yardrunk and put troops against the Union Loans and Mongols and to the side of the combat hand edge of the flies crossed. And just as the Genghis Khan in the Mongolian and Mongolian Vanoyan they pleased as Temujin was strengthened by his power turning the people in uniform, in military organization, most severe discipline and telescoping rootless leaders, who was higher than those born hiring Mongolian Altan Kosa Hutch arthritis. And all of them were against Temujin and began to communicate with the enemy unit of the civil war. What do you want brother to brother is however the Naimans despite the energy of their leader will be Hans Khan as he proclaimed the struggle for freedom of the steppe for the customs of the fathers across the steppe, where the widest propaganda Temujin them everywhere ahead and as the military of the Mongol act expeditiously faster scattered across the steppe when needed and united need when recruitment was coming slowly and heavy, and propaganda ahead of Temujin advanced the idea of the unity and opposition against all enemies foreign and domestic and order the nomination able true, and the people at all times wants justice more than the following paternal tradition that interpreted their customs if the Lord you got in the stable and he is a fool and you're smart. Of course you will play for someone who speaks my fools put horses almost a smart command. And the people looked towards Temujin 1203 you rub defeated and stood in. And who is more important in the type of Van Hong Korean or Temujin Wang Hong kind of important to Temujin here. The actual production tiddies up all the power to themselves and to their hands. This vodka old deceiver decided that it was time with the gin to complete the bet. Koreans emerged. Conspiracy afraid to go one-on-one against an army. Temujin the Burn decided to set a trap for him. He sent you whether the wife of the ambassadors to tell he changed his mind. That he agrees to the marriage of their grandsons and granddaughters, children Genghis Khan disk he believed come to me gave wedding invite. This is a guerrilla that Gina Temujin wanted to go box, where he would have been killed immediately. But to well known to black slaves, who were grazing the cattle entered Orkhan. They overheard the conversation of the Trinity chiefs about the ball, rode to that Jin and warned him about everything. And Temujin did not fall into the trap. A war broke out between the Mongols and in front of us, in which all the tribal leaders of the Mongols betrayed their Khan, all his relatives, including his brother Kosa, sided with the enemy. Nevertheless, relying on the military might of his new army, Temujin decided to take the battle to Kolkingul. Here, in those places where Zhukov would later defeat the Japanese, a great battle took place. And in this battle only the desperate courage of the freaks and Manutov, who fell on the camp of the Koreans, was cooling and the valor of the Mongol troops, raised by Tom Jin saved the Khan from complete defeat. The guerrillas won. But there may still be more. Naaman from depriving Dayan Chrono numerical superiority, and it was the decisive moment. after which Genghis Khan defeated. But first, before it happened, it took a lot of effort to apply to with the attack, and whether it could be different. He knew he was stronger. Reads the testament of Sun Tzu, if you're strong seems weak. And the Mongols used the company disinformation, Naaman convincing them that they are weak. Sabotage clashes, specially framed, hiring us as dead. Silence to tell the spirit. Itchy scabby, horse killed Mongol warrior, and captured the Norman horse. And the whole camp laughed at by the Mongols, if they are mangy horses, how they will be with us to fight. And on the other hand, Genghis Khan ordered each soldier to light fires for 5 nights. And intelligence reported Dayan Khan of the Mongols that a huge amount of that is being in a situation of conflicting information. Dayan X failed to impose the correct solution to his crooked subordinate commander. He suggested way. He has correctly assessed the situation, and in a council of war suggested the retreat in the Altai Mountains, who have horses full and thick, but not only the weight will drop slightly during the retreat, and Mongolian hordes of these nags mangy. Not all die here there, and Mongols night cushy and take well. Eat a lot, so we just get tied up in them, and now we will fight with them. They won a number of fires. Recites, let's move to lure pure than the strength of Genghis Khan. Then break plant was correct, but the situation of conflicting information. Generals Dayan Khan, they were unable to navigate, and they acted in unison against his lord. Said, you like a woman behave. Dayan Khanti, what they do to you half dead. These can, yes we do. Now the left one will survive here. All he said in the Mongol thrust cheek through, but it is hard not blink an eye. He was, at least the blood would drain out had he not retreat or a warehouse. But the son of a bunch of bow said, cowardly as a black woman, my father Tayan X, and so now carries such nonsense. And he was supported by all the generals, and Jabba X Satan supported, who said that now is a good time to break Genghis Khan, and gives Harley were made for the battle. I just music. How much I note that again. Genghis Khan uses a technique that will later be perfected in Nazi Germany. It is precisely this contradictory pumping of information that the Germans used in 1941 to paralyze Stalin's actions in preparation for war and turn out to be the winner. His 3. I saw a battle, and in this battle, Yavoka suddenly leaves with his troops. The Naimans instantly lose their numerical superiority over the Mongols, but the qualitative superiority was already on the side. Their Gina Naiman break, surrounded by Dayan Khan, killed his lover's lips, captured Sue prisoner. She really worked hard to bring Naiman Mongols against it, said that the Mongols and such dirty smelly barbarians that they allow milks our cows only after they will help your hands and feet, and here now it will lead Genghis Khan. Vita's mocking look at her and say, you said that the grill is very smelly, so will you be my concubine? I am so gonna fuck. And then tells their camp itself, the last concubine, to do everything in her not abused, forced her brushwood to collect the water carrier, to clean dirty pots, and in the past humiliation and neglect is their gubsky proud beauty will spend the rest of my days until I die. Naaman will be broken remnants of their retreat, will be led by the son of Dayan Honecker, stalking not stop not until the war in general, will fight to the death as measurements marquee to you, will also move in the battle, losing people, losing their grazing pastures, but they are not to submit. Genghis Khan, but it is already borderline war on the margins, and that is the core of the great step. After the victory over Naimans will now lie soon. The time will bring it to him and Gavacha II, which will gather all his men, and the last 5 riders with whom he wandered in the steppe will give him Temujin, although Gavacha to warn them about that. You should not do it. Temujin punishing the traitors who give him their natural khans. They are not believe. As soon as Jawal bring Genghis Khan really executed, betrayed Gavacha. But the Kirov, but he executes, and the Jam, though there's a strange legend that who is Gavacha, why is he so behaved, essentially doing in all this war in the desert. That is Jama Hussein, saved by Genghis Khan, rescued him after battle, betrayed Abjud or when instead of to finish, he made cruel the play and left with his troops. He saved him during the war, rather. To me, he saved him during the war with the recruitment of us in the final battle, if not for Jama. Though it is still unknown Boccaccio who won in fact the case. He was acting as an agent of Genghis Khan, and in the hostile camp constantly in many events, and here he is in the hands of Genghis Khan, and goes on a very interesting conversation between Jamahai and Drivus that Gavacha. It begins well, as there is in the secret history presents, so supposedly. Genghis Khan proposed Jamahi due to enter is to shafts in the second wagon wheel in the cart. Right hand of my together, we will rule peoples, and Gavacha allegedly told him that I'm the thorn in your boot, I to sleep there ain't cool. But in short,